One of the best-known spy gadgets used in film.
Although most people prefer their Metrocal cold, it can be...
Get your scratch-sniff smell-o-vision Q-Cost.
Imagine a time when astronauts were walking on the moon, a time when the Beatles ruled the airwaves, and a time when everyone thought the future would look like the Jetsons. That was the 1960s, a wild, colorful decade filled with optimism, experimentation, and an unshakable belief that technology could solve every problem. From space-age gadgets to bizarre household inventions, it was an era bursting with bold ideas. And while some of those ideas became the foundation of modern tech, others crashed harder than a tie-dye Vespa on a lava lamp. In this video, we'll be exploring 25 innovative products from the 1960s that failed miserably. Back in the early 1960s, a new diet drink called Metrocal hit the shelves, and people went crazy for it at first. The idea was simple. Just mix the powder with water, drink it instead of eating real meals, and boom, you'd lose weight. Sounds easy, right? But here's the twist. The stuff tasted awful, like really bad. Imagine drinking a glass of bland, chalky milk that somehow made you hungrier. Most folks couldn't get past the first few sips without gagging, and even those who stuck with it found themselves still starving.
Metrocal was developed to help you lose weight and avoid regaining it. And now, Metrocal is available in new liquid form, ready to drink.
People got so desperate that they started adding booze, yes, actual liquor, to the drink just to choke it down. Metrocal went from miracle diet drink to joke of the decade real fast. In the end, it gave one big lesson. No matter how good the marketing is, taste still matters. But when it's not your taste buds being let down, what happens when it's your ears? Sinclair Radionics thought they'd invented something game-changing. The world's first pocket-sized FM radio. Released in 1965 as the Micro FM, it was tiny but plagued by technical glitches, weak reception, and erratic performance. The design looked sleek and futuristic, but the functionality just wasn't there. Early adopters quickly realized that style couldn't make up for spotty sound. Users were frustrated by poor tuning and limited battery life. Although illegal clones popped up overseas, the actual product never took off commercially. Sinclair tried again with the Micromatic, billed as the world's smallest radio in 1967, but the FM pocket tuner had already made its mark as one of the defining gadget failures of that era. But Sinclair wasn't alone. Another bold design soon followed, with even bigger dreams and an even harder fall. Let's take a trip back to the mid-1960s, when a Canadian company called Clairtone decided to shoot for the stars with its fancy new GTV color television. This wasn't your average boxy TV. It was sleek, stylish, and looked like something straight out of a futuristic movie. Clairtone believed they were about to change the game. But here's the problem. The world just wasn't ready.
Function, remote control, color television. So beautiful, it enhances any decor.
Back then, color TVs were still super pricey and not many people had them in their homes. So while the GTV looked amazing, most folks simply couldn't afford it. To make things worse, Clairtone poured a ton of money into advertising and made some big mistakes in production. By 1967, they were down over $6 million. Ouch! What started as a bold, beautiful idea turned into a financial disaster. Imagine watching a movie and smelling the on-screen scene. Grass, fresh rain, or coffee, or so advertisers promised. Smell-O-Vision debuted in the 1960s film Scent of Mystery, but it flopped fast. Scent dispensers hissed, odors arrived out of sync, sometimes seconds late.
Sony is introducing Smell-O-Vision at the Consumer Electronics Show in Vegas this week. The goal is to make gaming as immersive.
And theaters smelled weird afterward. The technology was distracting, inconsistent, and frankly, kind of gross. Audiences laughed the first time, but it never caught on. Smell-O-Vision was shelved and left in the dust. Smell-O-Vision tried to change how we watched movies. Next came a device that tried to change how we read them. Back in 1963, someone came up with a gadget called the Read-O-Matic, and on paper, it sounded like a genius idea. especially for people who struggled with reading. The device was supposed to make things easier by using a little mechanical arm to point out one line of text at a time, helping readers stay focused. But the reality? Not so great. This thing wasn't quiet. It made an annoying scraping sound every time it moved. Like nails on a chalkboard. Instead of helping people concentrate, it became a noisy distraction. And let's not forget the price tag. It cost way more than it should have for something you could replicate with a simple ruler and a little patience. People quickly lost interest, especially when better, quieter, and cheaper tools came along. The Amphicar launched in the early 60s as a car that could drive into the water and float. Cool, right? But in reality, it was slow on land and painfully slow in water. It also leaked. Steering it on water was awkward, and getting in or out at boat ramps often turned into a public spectacle. Maintenance was a nightmare, especially with all the extra waterproofing needed to keep it from sinking.
It's floating! It's floating! Krista.
Owners had to grease over a dozen points after every swim just to keep it running. And despite the novelty, it wasn't exactly cheap. Buyers discovered it was neither a great car nor a real boat, just a gimmick. Only around 4,000 were ever built, and the novelty wore off fast. Fun to look at, but awful to live with. If a car that swims couldn't quite make waves, what happens when someone tries to fly instead? Imagine it's the 1960s, and President John F. Kennedy is standing there, watching a man literally fly through the air using a jetpack. It looked like something straight out of the Jetsons. Futuristic, exciting, and totally mind-blowing. People were sure this was the beginning of a flying future. The Bell rocket belt had arrived, and it promised to let humans zip around like superheroes. But reality hit fast. The thing could only stay in the air for about 20 seconds, just long enough to travel around 400 feet. And when it came time to land, let's just say it wasn't exactly smooth. It was bumpy, risky, and way too dangerous for everyday use. Plus, it cost a fortune to build and fuel. So, while the idea made headlines and got people dreaming, it turned out to be more show than substance. Back in the 1960s, Chevrolet thought they had come up with a genius idea to help drivers deal with icy roads. Instead of going through the hassle of putting on traditional metal snow chains, they introduced something called the liquid tire chain. The idea was simple. Just press a button, and your car would spray a chemical onto the rear tires that supposedly gave you better grip on ice. Sounds pretty cool, right? Well, not exactly. In reality, it barely made a difference when the roads got really slick. The spray left behind a weird, sticky mess, and in some cases, it even messed up the car's paint job. Drivers complained it was more trouble than it was worth. Plus, it didn't last long. Just a few spins of the wheels, and it was gone. Before long, people went back to using traditional chains or switched to better winter tires. British motorcycle maker Velocette attempted to launch the Vogue scooter with a full fiberglass touring body. Production ran from around 1960 to 1965, but poor performance, high cost, and sluggish sales doomed it. The fiberglass design was ahead of its time, but it made the scooter heavy and hard to handle. Riders also complained about awkward ergonomics and a lack of power, especially compared to cheaper competitors. Despite its sleek, futuristic look,
immediately behind the mudguard, at the bottom, there is a black section covering the end of the...
It simply didn't deliver a good riding experience. Only a few hundred sold over 5 years. The project drained the company's capital and set it on the path to closure by 1971. It became a lesson in overambition meeting underwhelming execution. The Vogue flopped in motion. Next came a system that failed before it even moved. Back in the late 1960s, a company called Computer Applications Inc., CAI, thought they were onto something huge. They had this bold idea for a computer system named SpeedAta, a high-tech tool that was supposed to totally change how warehouses worked. It was meant to be faster, smarter, and way more efficient than anything else out there. They poured in over $10 million to get it off the ground. Dreaming it would be the future of logistics and inventory management. But here's the thing. The customers just didn't show up. The demand they were counting on never really happened, and CAI hit a financial wall. They still needed another $5 million to finish it all up, but no one was willing to throw more money into the project. By April 1970, they pulled the plug. The company fell apart soon after. Ever heard of the shower hood? In the mid-1960s, someone thought, what if you could take a shower without messing up your hair? So they built this giant plastic dome hooked to a vacuum system.
Reversible. You won't have to waste time cleaning this because every time you shower, you flip it inside out and the shower cleans it for you. Best of all, you can have all this for the low price.
It sounded clever. Keep your style dry while showering. But the actual experience? Awkward and clunky. It looked like a space helmet and felt like one too. No one wanted to stand under that every morning. People preferred the simplicity of a shower cap. The device never caught on and disappeared into the annals of weird 60s inventions. Yes, this was a real thing. In cramped city apartments, parents strapped their babies into wire cages hanging outside windows to get fresh air. Sounds horrifying, right? It promised sunshine and ventilation, but quickly became notorious. Safety concerns were huge.
All this high life, it could go to a girl's head. It's Daddy. Yes, they respect him, even if they do sometimes look down on him.
Babies dangling outside high-rise windows? No thanks. Public opinion shut it down fast, and rightfully so. What might have seemed futuristic turned out to be downright reckless. All right, imagine this. It's 1964, and a man named Klaus Scholz comes up with a genius idea. A robot that answers phone calls for you. Sounds cool, right? Except it didn't really do anything. When the phone rang, this little machine would reach out, lift the receiver, and then just sit there. No hello, no message, no beep, just complete awkward silence.
Will you please leave a message and I'll call you back. Go ahead. And proceeds to make his call in perfect confidence that business will be cared for during his absence.
The poor caller on the other end had no clue what was going on. People thought it was creepy rather than helpful, like talking to a ghost who didn't feel like chatting. The worst part? It didn't record anything, didn't take notes, didn't pass along a message. It just stared into the void and wasted time. Not surprisingly, folks quickly tossed it aside when real answering machines came out. The kind that actually spoke, beeped, and let people leave messages. In the end, this silent robot became a short-lived tech fail no one really missed. In the early 60s, before portable music players, companies experimented with record players designed to go anywhere. Think vinyl on the move. The Emerson Wondergram was one such device, marketed as the
45 RPM adapter. It was missing the adapter, so I designed one and printed it. The battery compartment is right here.
World's smallest record player. The trouble was, vinyl is fragile. One bump, and it would get skips or scratches. You needed a perfectly flat, stable surface to play it properly. Good luck finding that on a bus or in a park. The dream of mobile vinyl quickly faded, especially with the rise of cassette tapes and, later, Walkman-style players. Picture a little black box with a switch. Flip it on, and a mechanical hand comes out just to switch itself off. That's it. Invented in the 1960s by Captain Koenig under the name Little Black Box, or Monster Inside the Black Box, it had no real function other than making you smile or scratch your head. Sold as a quirky novelty toy, it was fun once or twice, but made zero sense as anything useful. It became more of a gag gift than a gadget. Okay, get this. Back in 1962, someone actually thought it was a good idea to build a rifle that could fire a mini nuclear bomb. Yes, seriously. It was called the M65 Recoilless Nuclear Rifle, and it could shoot a 51-pound atomic warhead nearly 3 miles away. Sounds like something straight out of a bad sci-fi movie, right? The idea was that soldiers could use it on the battlefield like a giant bazooka.
If there were a military failed inventions Hall of Fame, there would surely be a place of honor for the nuclear rifle.
Except they forgot one small thing. Radiation doesn't care who fired the bomb. The blast might take out the enemy, but it could also roast the team that pulled the trigger. They even tested this thing in front of Robert Kennedy, but after realizing just how insane and impractical it really was, the military quickly buried the idea. No surprise there. It's now remembered as one of the most dangerous, unnecessary, and completely over-the-top weapon flops in history. It was definitely not a proud moment in military innovation. This solid-state bubble memory system was dreamed up at Bell Labs in the late 1960s. It stored bits as magnetic bubbles on thin film. At the time, it seemed like the future, non-volatile, radio-proof, and durable.
So given that the keyboard is not working, probably the first thing to do is to pull the keyboard and have a look at it.
But mainstream hard disks and semiconductor RAM got cheaper, faster, and more practical. Bubble memory was slow and expensive. It faded away before the 1980s. It was a beautiful concept, but eclipsed by better tech. Back in the 1960s, some inventors had wild dreams of making tanks and cars that could actually fly. Sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi comic book, right? Well, they gave it a shot, building strange-looking flying cars that were supposed to soar through the sky. But here's the thing, these machines were ridiculously heavy, nearly impossible to control, and just not built for takeoff. To get them off the ground, they needed massive tow planes or imaginary hover systems that didn't even exist yet. In theory, they were cool. In reality, a total mess. Most never made it past the prototype stage. They looked awesome in pictures, sleek, shiny, and bold, but once people tried to make them work, it was clear they were just too crazy to be practical. These flying car ideas ended up as nothing more than fun what-if experiments that never really got off the ground, literally. All right, imagine you're on a packed 1960s train, shoulder to shoulder with strangers, and you want to read your newspaper. Enter one of the strangest inventions of the decade. Glasses with tiny mirrors built into them, angled just right so you could read something above your head without having to tilt your neck or move your arms. Sounds kind of genius, right? At least on paper. But once you actually put them on, yikes.
Okay to do over-the-counter reading glasses, but prescription glasses are usually way better. Now, speaking of prescription computer glasses or reading glasses,
The frame was bulky and uncomfortable, the mirrors fogged up constantly, and trying to read through them made you feel like you were in a funhouse. The angles were confusing, the text looked warped, and half the time you ended up with a headache before finishing the headlines. So, yeah, while it gets points for creativity, practicality just wasn't in the cards. Most people tried it once, chuckled a little, then stuffed it in a drawer, never to be seen again. Have you ever sat down to eat breakfast and thought, you know what this egg needs? A sharp corner. Yeah, probably not. But back in the 1960s, someone actually decided that round eggs were just too ordinary. So they came up with the egg cuber, a strange little plastic gadget that squeezed hard-boiled eggs into perfect cube shapes. That's right, square eggs. At first glance, it was kind of funny. People brought them out at brunch just for laughs. Picture the confused looks on everyone's faces as these boxy eggs showed up on their plates. It was more of a party trick than an actual kitchen tool.
Actually, these square eggs were laid by plain everyday chickens. It is a new invention called QB that reshapes old-fashioned egg-shaped eggs into the newfangled 8-cornered blocks.
And beyond making your food look like it came from a geometry class, it really didn't do anything useful. After the novelty wore off, and let's be honest, that didn't take long, the egg cuber quietly disappeared. Just another example of a weird idea from the 60s that never really cracked it. Imagine a world where video calling existed in 1964. AT&T did it. They debuted the picture phone at the 1964 World's Fair in Queens, New York. You could see the person you were talking to, but the tech was way ahead of its time. It was low resolution, super slow, and cost a whopping $16 to $27 per minute just to talk. And that didn't include building the hardware or setting it up.
Then dial your number just as with an obsolete old 55 model phone, and when your party answers, There he is, almost as big as life on the 10-inch video screen.
Businesses and regular folks found it prohibitively expensive and awkward. People simply preferred good old voice calls. By the time commercial offers rolled out in a few cities like Chicago and New York, nobody cared. The dream of bringing faces to phone calls faded fast. So much so that video calling wasn't popular again until we had the internet decades later. In an era obsessed with shortcuts, vibrating exercise belts arrived as miraculous waist whittlers that buzzed away fat with zero effort. Users strapped on these motorized bands, settled into armchairs clutching magazines, and awaited inches to vanish, only to find nothing but mild irritation, bruised skin, and a bruised ego.
Fit appropriate. Oof. I'm really having a time of my life. Can you leave? Okay, you want to try it? Yeah.
Behind the flashy ads lie a simple truth. Vibration can't burn calories or break down fat cells. As disappointment mounted, manufacturers quietly shifted to new fitness gimmicks. Yet the vibrating belt set a blueprint for every overhyped health fad since. Modern detox teas and AI-powered workout apps trace their roots here. Yet none have managed to deliver on that daydream of effortless transformation. In the mid-1960s, farm fresh milk bottles made morning appearances in sturdy wooden crates delivered right to front porches. Though designed for repeated use, moisture seeped into the slats, causing rot and warped panels that let heavy glass bottles slip through. Clattering crashes left glass shards across lawns, transforming quaint doorsteps into obstacle courses. Milkmen navigated piles of soggy wood.
A few 1-gallon milk bottles, you can see here. They come in
slowing routes and racking up maintenance costs for dairies. By decade's end, cardboard cartons and lightweight plastic carriers took over, slashing breakage rates and streamlining delivery. Today, vintage wood crates survive only as rustic decor or impromptu garden planters, a reminder that durability must go hand in hand with user-friendly design and safety. Swinging 60s marketing hailed polyester pantsuits as the ultimate low-maintenance wardrobe heroes. Promising wrinkle-free days from boardroom to nightclub, these shiny synthetics initially dazzled shoppers. But the reality was a personal sauna. Fibers trapped heat, clung to odors, and caused relentless perspiration. Wearers endured chafing seams and chemical-like smells that no amount of detergent or home ironing could tame.
And the decorative pocket flaps, which was another characteristics, especially of leisure suits of that period. One of the things that I
Cleaning challenges emerged as harsh soaps stripped finishes and fabric stiffened after each wash. By the early 70s, cotton, wool, and linen reclaimed popularity, proving that breathability and comfort outweigh convenience claims. Even today, eco-minded designers revisit natural fibers, citing polyester's legacy to champion materials that respect human biology. Once the undisputed champions of accounting desks, adding machines of the 1960s were marvels of mechanical engineering. These hulking devices, weighing anywhere from 5 to 20 pounds, featured rows of clackety typewriter-style keys and whirring internal gears that snapped into action with every calculation. Their satisfying clicks and casual ribbon prints made balancing ledgers feel almost ceremonious, especially for espresso-fueled accountants. But by the early 1970s, compact electronic calculators appeared, lighter, faster, and more affordable, signaling the end of the adding machine's reign.
100 classroom computing system is being used by many schools with remarkable results in subject matter comprehension and reasoning skills.
Office floors, once lined with their bulky frames, emptied out as businesses embraced sleek digital alternatives. By the 1980s, adding machines had disappeared entirely, relegated to dusty, memory-filled storerooms or museums. Today, they remain nostalgic relics of an era when every sum required both muscle and math.